We are now ready to begin our final mandala design. To begin, we need to make our square piece of paper. So in previous demonstrations, I've demonstrated using an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of sketchbook paper or a 9 by 12 piece of sketchbook paper. If you have gone out to purchase watercolor paper, you may not find it in either of those two sizes. It might be a little bit larger. Just realize to make a square, all you have to do is cut off the excess paper from one side. So whatever the measurement is on the shorter length is what you had to measure on the longer length to create your square. So I'm going to once again demonstrate with an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of paper and with a 9 by 12 inch sheet of paper. But if yours is larger, all you have to do is create a square. Similar technique, just different measurements. So for this, I now have a heavy piece of sketchbook paper or watercolor paper. This is going to be my good copy, so I want my good paper. I have a ruler, I have a compass, and I have a pencil. So to begin, I'm going to first measure off in landscape position. Since I'm using an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of paper and I want an 8.5 inch square, I only have to make measurements along my 11 inch side. So I'm going to start once again with the 0 on the left edge of my paper and make a mark at 8.5, and moving my ruler to the top with the 0 on the left edge, I'm going to once again make a mark at 8.5. And I'm going to connect those two marks with my ruler, and once again from the edge of the paper to the edge of the paper, draw a line, and I'm going to now cut along this line to create my square. Now that I have my square, I'm ready to start working and creating my mandala. So if you remember from previous steps, our first step is, after we have our square piece of paper, to find the halfway point, the center of this square, by measuring along the sides half of what the measurement is. So this is an 8.5 piece of paper, so I'm going to make a mark at 4.25 and moving my ruler to the top, making my mark at 4.25, connecting those two marks, and I'm going to lightly draw my line. I'm going to now turn my square 1/4 of a turn. And once again, starting at the bottom, my paper again measures 8.5, so I'm going to make a mark at 4.25, move my ruler to the top, make a mark at 4.25, connect those two marks, and lightly draw a line. And then I'm going to want to just put a little bit of a dot where those lines cross for the center of my mandala. Our next step is to divide up each side in half again. So half of 4.25 is 2 1/8. So as we've done before, at the bottom here, I'm going to mark at 2 1/8. That is 6 3/8 when it is added to 4.25. And then once again at the top, make my mark at 2 1/8, 6 3/8, and I have those 4 marks completed. And I need to do the same thing to this side. So I'm going to once again turn my paper, and I'm going to make those same marks around the outer edge. 2 1/8, 6 3/8, 2 1/8, 6 3/8, and now I have all of my marks made that I need for now. So if you remember from our previous practices, we are now ready to draw our circle. So I'm going to put my compass over top the center of my square, and once again I'm going to look for the measurement on the compass that's going to give me my largest circle, because I want to fill this entire piece of paper up with my largest circle. This is the outside of my mandala, so I want to make it as large as possible. Now that I have my outside border, it is time to take these marks, and we got to number them, and do it lightly because we do want to get rid of this. So 1, starting at the top left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Make my 7 a little bit better there. And again, I'm doing it light because I want to get rid of them later. So if you remember, we're going to line up mark 1 and mark 6 with our ruler, and we're going to draw a line very lightly from the outer edge to the outer edge of our circle, and that is on both marks. I'll come over here to 2 and 5, line those 2 marks up, and once again lightly from outer edge to outer edge of circle, connect. Going to turn my paper a quarter of a turn. I'm going to line up marks 3 and 8. From outer edge to outer edge of circle, and marks 4 and 7. And I'm going to turn it back around so I can read 1, 2, and all my numbers correctly. So now that I have those marks, I'm ready to divide this up into sections. So remember, where 1 touches the outer circle and number 5 touches the outer circle, I'm going to connect those 2 areas through the center of my circle. And once I have that lined up with my ruler, I'm going to once again lightly draw a line through my circle to connect those. And I'm going to do that for all of my marks all the way around. Make sure that when you line up one mark to another on opposite sides of the circle, that you are always passing through the center. If your ruler is not passing through the center, then either 1, those 2 marks are not meant to be lined up and connected, or 2, your measurements may be off and you have to go back and correct them. So now that I have my sections, I can go ahead and get rid of this information on the outside. I no longer need my lines connecting the edge of my paper to the outer circle, and I no longer need the numbers for those marks. And now that I have that cleaned up, I'm ready to start creating the inner circles. So you are required to have at least 3 inner circles. So as Mrs. Kowalski demonstrated before in practices, you're going to put, once again, your compass on the center of the circle, and it's up to you where the spacing occurs on these circles. You can have one that's very close to the center. You can have them drawn further out, and the spacing between them is up to you. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to see if I can get one pretty close to the center here. And without moving my compass, I'm going to create one more. So I now have 2 circles. Maybe I'll do one pretty close to this one. And since I have a lot of space here, I could leave this as is. I have my required 3 circles inside, but I think I'm going to add at least one more, maybe even 2. So maybe I'll have one pretty close to this last one I just drew. Maybe one pretty close to my outer edge. So right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 circles inside my larger circle. So again, it is up to you how many circles you put in there, but you need at the least 3 circles for this final stage. So you have your square paper made, you have your 12 sections divided up, you have your outer circle of the mandala, which is your outer border, and on the inside of that outer circle you need at least 3 smaller circles to begin applying your final design to your final mandala.